Good morning, dear students. I am Mrs. Priyanka Dikshit, currently working as Senior Assistant Professor in the School of Pharmacy, BBD University, Lucknow. Today we are going to study about the topic Emetics. Let's start. Starting with the definition of emetics. Emetics are the drugs which give rise to forced emesis by which the contents of the stomach get expelled through the oral cavity. They are important or used in case of poisoning. Classes or types of emetics. Generally, there are two classes of emetics. First one is those drugs that act on chemoreceptor trigger zone or CTZ zone located in the medulla part of the brain, and second class acts on stomach itself. The chemoreceptor trigger or CTZ zone is an area of medulla oblongata that receives inputs from blood-borne drugs or hormones and communicates with other structures in vomiting center to initiate vomiting. The CTZ zone is located within the area postrema, which is on the fourth floor of the ventricle and is outside of the blood-brain barrier, and it is also a part of vomiting center. Emetics basically act by two ways, or depending upon their mechanism of action, emetics can be classified into two types. First one is locally acting emetics. The emetics which act upon stomach itself belongs to a class of locally acting emetics. These emetics act via local irritation of the gastric mucosa. Examples of the drugs belonging to these categories are ammonium bicarbonate and ipecacuanha. Centrally acting emetics. Centrally acting emetics are the drugs that act on chemoreceptor trigger zone situated in the floor of fourth ventricle of medulla in the brain. Examples of the drugs that act on this zone are apomorphine and morphine. The figure depicted here shows various cerebral or vomiting centers that induce vomiting. The centers which are located in the brain are the VC or vomiting center, which induces vomiting through odor, smell, or taste. The chemoreceptor trigger zone is situated in the medulla of the brain, and it induces vomiting through the use of specific drugs or toxins. Second vomiting center is situated in the stomach, and it induces vomiting through the local irritation of the gastric lining or mucosa of the stomach. Uses of emetics. Emetics are mainly used to induce vomiting. Vomiting is primarily considered to be a respiratory function, and its ultimate result is the evacuation of the stomach contents through emesis or forced regurgitation, by which the contents of the stomach gets expelled out from the body by producing a reflex action through which toxic or foreign substances get expelled out in poisoning cases. Emetics are also added to cough preparations in low doses to stimulate the flow of respiratory tract secretions. Emetics such as syrup of ipecac have been used in emergent cases of poisoning because they induce forceful emptying of the stomach. Examples of inorganic compounds acting as emetics are copper sulfate, sodium chloride, zinc sulfate, and antimony potassium tartrate. Emetics are contraindicated in debilitated patients and in poisoning caused by corrosive or petroleum products. Examples of some natural emetics. Salt with warm water acts as a mild emetic. Grounded mustard seeds can be taken with warm water to act as an emetic. After a narcotic poison, strong coffee can be taken to act as an emetic. Copper sulfate. The synonyms of copper sulfate are blue vitriol, Roman vitriol, the vitriol of copper, and blue stone. Molecular formula of copper sulfate that is used mostly as a emetic is hydrous form of copper sulfate having molecular formula CuSO4 5H2O. Preparation of copper sulfate. Copper sulfate can be prepared by treating metallic copper with concentrated sulfuric acid. Properties of copper sulfate. Both hydrated and anhydrous forms of copper sulfates tends to decompose on heating, hence they do not have exact boiling points. The crystal structures of hydrous and anhydrous forms of copper sulfate are variable, where the anhydrous form has orthorhombic crystal structure and the hydrous form, that is CuSO4 5H2O, have triclinic structure. The copper ions in copper sulfate react with chloride ions in concentrated hydrochloric acid solution to form tetrachlorocuprate. Reaction is as shown. When heated to 650 degrees Celsius, copper sulfate undergoes decomposition to yield cupric oxide and sulfur trioxide. That's all about the topic emetics. Thank you.